Chapter 5. Hi? Sean stopped just inside the door to his tiny cell. The screw who had escorted him from the showers gave him a shove in the back and closed the door, but didn't lock it. A man stood in the middle of the floor with his arms behind his back, feet slightly apart, back straight, like he owned the place, like he was the one receiving the visitor. Sean guessed he was in his late 30s. His face was worn and lined, his light brown hair cropped short. A furrowed brow sat above pale grey eyes that were frighteningly alert. He wore green slacks and a white t-shirt over a wiry, athletic frame. The shirt had some kind of crest on the left breast. He smiled when he saw Sean. But that smile. It wasn't a friendly, pleased-to-meet-you smile. It wasn't the sneer of a tag or the mad grin of a copper. It was the way Sean might smile at a new Ferrari which he just knew he was going to wire later that night. Quiet, keeping it to himself, but supremely confident that he would get what he wanted. Sean Harker. Hi. Phil Adams. It was a London accent. Adams held his right hand out to shake, and Sean clocked the tattoo straight away. The man saw where Sean was looking and held out the other hand. Both powerful forearms were heavily inked. "Matching pair," he said, with another friendlier smile. Sean didn't return the smile. Adams lowered his hands. "Mate," Sean said. His voice sounded weird in his ears. The first words he had said out loud to another human for 5 days. "If you get locked in with me for another 23 hours, then I'm keeping the bed." "They'll let me out." "Do you want to sit down?" Sean wasn't sure he did. They were about the same height, so he wasn't about to be intimidated, but it was clear from Adams's body language that neither was he. The man perched himself on the edge of Sean's table. Sean sat on the bed, a safe distance away, so that he could sit without craning his head upwards. Adams picked up a slim plastic folder from the desk but didn't open it. So, 1 month down, 5 to go, and you get yourself thrown in chokey. Careless, ain't he? Sean shrugged. Adams opened the folder and made a show of browsing through it. 12 months for taking without consent, and obviously not your first time. Just the first one they got you for. Bit of a petrol head, are we? Another shrug. Adams went on. "My sister's lad says petrol is a chemical for turning money into fun. Here, I've been dying to show this to someone who'll appreciate it." He dug out his phone and flipped through screens until he had the picture he wanted, before holding it out to Sean. Sean waited, to show he was only doing this because he wanted to, and then took it to see what the fuss was. Screen showed a couple of smiling lads, maybe a bit older than him, apparently standing in a road while they gave a thumbs up to the camera. He almost asked, "Who are the losers?" but something about Adams's obvious pride said maybe he shouldn't. He read the status caption. "Hey, this is us on the Mulsanne Strait. Hours before the 24-hour Le Mans cars were doing over 200 miles per hour down here." Okay. He had to admit, that really was quite cool. He handed the phone back. "That's my nephew and a mate," Adam said. "They saved ages for that holiday." And suddenly it was clear. Sean grinned, without finding anything funny. Different way of doing things, same old bollocks. The prison was trying a new way of making him into a useful member of society. And here it comes. The lesson. And what lesson would that be? You know, the lesson. You don't need to steal stuff, Sean. All you need to do is work hard, and you'll get your rewards that way. Well, shit. You saw right through me. Don't I feel dumb? Adams was back in the folder. Now, apart from that one incident with Joseph Ajayi, aka Tag, you've got a clean record in here. So what comes next, when you're out? If it was a choice between his old life and serving up fries for a year on a 0-hours contract so he could stand on the Mulsanne Strait, Sean knew which one he was going for. So he looked Adams in the eye. "Back to my mates," he said. "Ah, yes. The Lytton guys, right? Bit after my time, but I still know the names. Friends, loyalty, identity. That's it, isn't it?" His voice grew unexpectedly warm, and Sean cocked a suspicious eye. Adams was the first adult inside to talk about the guys like membership wasn't a dose of chlamydia, and that put him on his guard. So, I know exactly where you're coming from, which is why we're having this chat. I'm after lads with similar sets of values who might want something with all the benefits of the guys and none of the drawbacks. A number of other inmates have been identified as suitable, and I'll be speaking to them. At the moment, it's invitation only, so... Adams opened the folder and passed a sheet of A4 paper to Sean. He took it, flipped it around, and read what was on it. 2 minutes later, he raised his eyes to stare at Adams. "You're joking, right?" he said. "You can't actually be serious." Adams shook his head. "It's a new initiative," he said, nodding towards the sheet. "Full approval of the Ministry of Defence. The government wants to try it in a couple of places like this before rolling it out further. So it's a test case, a pilot thing. An army cadet force in a young offender institution. Still a few bits and pieces to sort out, so it goes live in January." Sean shook his head. "I'm not a toy soldier." He pinched the tracksuit top he was wearing, stretching out the material. "And I'm sick enough of wearing green, so whichever dickless politician thought this up, you can tell him I'm not interested." "I understand." Adam shrugged. "It's not for everyone. Some will always find it easier to back off from a challenge than try it out first." Sean didn't like the implication. "I didn't say I wasn't up to it. I said I wasn't interested." "So you're happy just being a waster, doing fuck all with your life?" Sean blinked. He'd never heard a member of staff say fuck before. Some rule about half the inmates technically being children. "Are you allowed to talk to me like that?" "I can talk however I like." "Look, I just want to do my time," Sean said, working hard to stay calm. "I don't want to run around in some crap uniform doing push-ups and star jumps. You think that's better than the guys? You've got no idea. No idea at all." Adams rolled his right sleeve up to the shoulder. Sean stared at the ink. He didn't recognize it exactly, but he knew what it was. A gang mark. "Got that 20 years ago. My mates, my gang. They're all gone now. Dead. Or gone straight. Or inside. Mostly inside. Yeah, I could get it lasered off. But it's a reminder where I've come from, what I've done, and where I am now." "You've been inside?" The question blurted out. Sean couldn't help it. "Not technically." Adams let the sleeve drop back and pulled up the hem of his t-shirt. A scar stretched from his belly button diagonally across his abs, which Sean couldn't help noticing were a lot more prominent than his own, and he knew he was fit. "I got stabbed. Spent a week in a coma. 5 weeks after that on life support, so I got time off in lieu." Sean didn't move. He wanted to say something that would shut the man down for good, but he was on the back foot now. The words wouldn't come. Adams tugged his shirt back down. What you have here, Harker, is a choice. You take a look around you. This could be your home on and off for the rest of your life. It's comfortable. You get fed. You're pretty safe, too. Don't even have to think for yourself, really, do you? Just let the state sort everything out. Did any of your schools teach you enough science to know what a parasite is? Sean sat up straight. Who are you calling a parasite? Or you could grow a pair and do something. Put your skills and talents to use. Sean laughed. Read the file, mate. My skills and talents are twacking cars and getting into fights, not saluting some bloke I've no respect for every day. Adams shook his head. First, he said, the only way you can show some bloke any respect at all is if you first learn to respect yourself. And from what I see, that's a long way off from happening. And second, Vietnam, Malaya, Oman, all military campaigns. But which is the odd one out? Sean stared at him. You what? It's Vietnam. Absolute fiasco. The other two were led and won by the British Army. And the way we did it was we won the locals over to our side, instead of bombing them into the Stone Age and expecting them to be grateful for the privilege of being on the front line. We used the skills they had in their native environments. You're a native, Harker. Only problem is, we're not at war. You reckon? Suddenly the smile was still on Adams's mouth, but it had left his eyes. We're at war right now. Just because you don't see it on CNN. Don't think it isn't real. It's building on the streets. And one way or another, you're going to be a street soldier. Maybe in uniform, maybe not. Suddenly there was a screw at the door, jangling his keys to make a point. You've had your 5 minutes, Sergeant. I need to lock Harker up. Coming. Adams stood and headed for the door. Hey, Sergeant, Sean began. Adams paused by the screw, looked back. Didn't say, did I? Yes, I'll be in charge of it. He touched one finger to his forehead. Don't bother saluting. I wouldn't want you to salute some bloke you've no respect for. So that was day 5. Days 6 and 7 just sort of merged. Adams's piece of paper lay untouched on the table. Day 8. Sean was in his own cell again. King escorted him back. He stood in the middle of the floor and looked around. It was a strange anticlimax. It was cool just to be left there and not have the door locked behind him, but even so. "You've been reassigned to a lessons schedule yet?" the warder asked. Not yet. Again, his voice sounded unusually loud inside his skull. He thought of going to see Gaz or Copper to announce his return, but they would be at their own lessons. "Can I have a shower, Mr. King? Could do with a good hot wash." The showers in basic were time-limited and supervised. Not the usual time of day, but sure, knock yourself out. Sean grabbed his towel and set off. The shower block smelled of damp and stale water, with a stronger toilet smell than usual today. Noises echoed off the tiled floors and walls, including the trickle of water from a cubicle that was already occupied. The showers were in individual cubicles. The changing area was common to everyone. Getting naked in front of other guys had been weird at first, but you got used to it. He stripped off quickly and headed for the cubicle next to the occupied one. Taking a shower during the day was unusual, but hey, he was doing it, so why shouldn't someone else? He grinned as the hot water hit his skin. He held his head under the flow and let it wash the memories of solitary away. He was letting the water flow over the rest of him when he felt something nudge his foot. He jerked it away instinctively and looked down, then leaped away. "Oh, fuck, that's disgusting!" All the cubicles had a common gutter so that your neighbour's water and grime flowed along through yours and into the drain at the end. A turd, an actual lump of human shit, was bobbing along in the stream, as innocent as a scabby, flea-bitten rat turning up on the kitchen counter. Furious, Sean rinsed his foot and wrapped the towel round his waist. He hurled himself out and hammered on the door of the occupied cubicle. "The fuck you think you're doing, you—" The door swung open, and he stared straight into the bloated, twisted face of a lad dangling by his neck from a towel wrapped round the shower bracket. Sean shouted, but only in surprise, because it took him a moment to realise who it was. The features were so distorted, and it was the last person he expected to see. The realisations came one after another. This is a guy who has hanged himself, who sort of looks like Gaz. And then he clocked the guy's tattoo, and he put two and two together, and he shouted more, and the shouts turned to screams. He threw himself at the body. Water streamed over him as he fumbled at the knot of the towel. It was soaking and his fingers slid off it. He tried to work them into the knot, but Gaz's weight had pulled it tight. He had to wrap his arms around Gaz's thighs and heave him up, which relieved the weight, but now he couldn't spare a hand to get at the knot. Gaz's legs were swollen and dark, and his skin was clammy to the touch like uncooked chicken. Sean squeezed his eyes shut and fought back a heaving stomach. He fumbled for the taps and shut them off, still holding Gaz up with one hand. He knew even then that it was too late, but he couldn't leave his mate to dangle, and so he screamed again as he held Gaz's weight in his arms. "Help me!" He had to bite it off abruptly as his stomach took advantage of the opening, and a column of vom shot halfway into his mouth. He swallowed and forced it down, and screamed again with words that bounced back off the dead flat tiles, and he kept screaming through his tears until someone came. "Help me! Help me!"